Hey everybody, Michael Snyder, Pacific Northwest Weather Watch. Today is December 10th, and right now we're looking at the infrared satellite imagery. You can see the Hawaiian Islands, kind of center bottom. There's Washington, Oregon to the upper right. And we've got some systems out across the Pacific Ocean, but I'm scrolled and zoomed out here because I want to show you across the Pacific Ocean. This is where we're looking. This area of energy here is likely going to be our next strong storm that's going to spin up somewhere off our coastal waters here. We're going to take a detailed look at that. But again, that's all the way across the Pacific Ocean right there. And there's the Mariana Islands. And if we want to take a look over there, you can see there's the Mariana Islands there. There's Japan. You can see the Aleutians back here. So it's this area back here, all the way back across the Pacific Ocean. Pretty amazing that we can detect a storm this far out in advance. Now, looking at a closer view of things here, you can see we are socked in eastern Washington, portions of eastern Oregon, Willamette Valley. A lot of the Puget Sound had some pretty dense fog this morning. That has since broken up for some areas, but South Sound, you can see in I-5 corridor is still dealing with some of that fog. Got some high clouds riding over the top of that, but look, if you're across the higher terrain, you are enjoying just some high clouds. Mount Rainier, or again, there's Mount St. Helens, Mount Hood right there, and there's Mount Adams. And taking a look at the Willamette Valley, we've been socked in Portland for a while, Salem at a half mile, Eugene up to 2 miles now. You can see Yakima has kind of been socked in as well, Spokane. Had some freezing fog out here across some of the Puget Sound that I saw this morning also, so there were some slick spots. Got to watch out for that when we're dropping down near freezing. And again, we're pretty socked in here and things are getting stagnant yet again, especially for eastern Washington. And if we take a look at what is to come, this is Spokane National Weather Service Tuesday through Thursday. Low clouds, areas of freezing fog, but then we get a pattern change coming up. And that's what we're going to be paying attention to as we go through the video here today. Thursday through Sunday, higher confidence return to active weather. We could get some snow even for some of the lower elevations east of the mountains. Now looking at Seattle, Tacoma really quickly here. Dense fog advisory still up for some areas. Same thing with Portland. And if we scroll down towards Medford, Oregon, you can see we do have that pattern change starting to show up here as we go through late Wednesday. A storm system probably going to be impacting more of Oregon versus Washington and some of Northern California versus Washington and British Columbia. I'll show you that here in a moment. And this is Pendleton, Oregon. Again, watch out in these morning hours with the freezing fog and the dense fog out there as well. Boise, Idaho also with some dense fog advisories, freezing fog up there towards the Grand, and air stagnation advisories out there as well. And Northern Rockies also, we got the foggy mornings through Thursday, then the snow returns as we go through Friday and the weekend. Now, if we take a wide look at things, this is what I was showing you here on the infrared satellite imagery at the start of this video. There's the Mariana Islands, there's Japan, the Aleutian Islands here. This is the area we're looking for right there. You can see Washington, Oregon, and BC all the way to the right of this screen. So we've got this system that's going to be rolling in as we go through Wednesday night into Thursday, mainly down into Oregon and Northern California. Then you can see our next storm system spinning up off the coastline right there. And this is going to be impacting all the way from British Columbia all the way down into California. And after that, we are likely to have additional systems riding up towards the Pacific Northwest. You can see these spinning up here as we go through the early portion of next week. And one of the interesting things is these correlate with some of the king tide activity. Probably the highest tides of the season, November, December, or January, are coming up as we go through this weekend. More on that here in a moment. Now, taking a look, we still have some auto discrepancy out here, and I want to kind of call attention to that. The European as of last night versus the GFS as of last night, still not in good agreement with what is to come. Initial storm system there, again, mainly impacting Oregon, California. This could be spreading some precipitation up across Washington. There's that initial storm. Then the stronger one starts to develop on the day Friday, and you can see the difference in that low pressure center there. And the GFS wants to keep it further north, and the European is closer to the California-Oregon border and then trying to move it into the Oregon coastline. But we're also going to take a look at the hot off the presses 12Z run here in a moment. But as you can see, even as of last night's run, still not a lot of model agreement, but you can see additional systems on the way as we go through the early portion of next week. So now here's the 12Z GFS hot off the presses. Let's take a look at this. When will the precipitation return? Looks like southern Oregon coast, northern California as we go through Wednesday night. And the GFS wants to keep a lot of this precipitation, Oregon, Cascades, and south, mainly impacting California, but some precipitation does get up across Washington in light amounts. And then the stronger storm arrives. And you notice the GFS was just this monster low pressure center out here, 966 millibar low. But right at this point, it's fairly far away. Start to bring some blustery conditions to the coastal areas, and then it makes its way towards Vancouver Island, and then you can see that pressure gradient start to tighten as it gets closer to the coastline here on the day Saturday, bringing some lower pressures here, and that's going to correlate again with the high tides. Just the act of the low pressure being around can help rise the sea level here. So, and that goes for interior areas as well. More on that here in a moment also. So then you see that system move through, another frontal system come through on Sunday, and then you get another low pressure out here as we go through the day Monday coming up. So definitely an active period that we are in, and then additional storms potentially off through the extended forecast. A little bit of an atmospheric river look if we look far enough out into fantasy land. Now, look at the North American model versus itself. So you can see we've got, it's not just the GFS and the European, but this initial storm system here. Well, let me clarify that. It's not just the GFS and the European that have been flipping and flopping on the placement of that low. And actually, the GFS has been pretty consistent with it. But if we look at the North American last night versus what it's showing this morning, and you can see some pretty big differences there. Look at that 982 millibar low up here, moving towards Vancouver Island, closer to what the GFS was showing versus last night's run on the North American model, much further south. So this is hot off the presses, the 12Z, the European, the king of models, the most accurate weather model out there. Let's take a look at what it says for the 12Z run. So there's that initial system. And again, this does spread precipitation across Washington, but better amounts across the Oregon Cascades, down through the Sierra Nevada, the Klamath Range, and whatnot. And this could even bring some measurable snowfall east of the mountains as well, where things are a bit colder as we go through Thursday morning. Maybe some freezing rain there in the Gorge, Washington-Oregon border. And then the next storm system arrives, and you can see this thing dropping down to 983, 982, 981 millibars. That is a very powerful storm with a very powerful pressure gradient. And the European has been hinting at this from time to time. This is a fairly significant windstorm if this were to unfold. This is hot off the presses, folks. That is an intense pressure gradient up the Washington coastline. And excuse me, I got a frog in my throat here. My son is sick, and I may be getting a little bit of his cold, but you can see this would bring a very intense pressure gradient across some of western Washington and potentially up into British Columbia here. So we really have to watch this storm. Just because the GFS and the NAM are showing a deeper low up here, the European, if it's on to something, that is going to be a significant weather maker here. And again, you can see the atmospheric river all the way from central California and bringing this precipitation all the way up across central British Columbia. Widespread, powerful storm system rolling through this weekend. And then we scroll on in towards next week. And again, we have additional systems possible here. We'll see how that unfolds, though. As you can see, we're scrolling a little bit too far off in the fantasy forecast. But yeah, we definitely need to watch this low placement. That would be quite a sinister blow to some areas of western Washington. Now, if we look at last night's, let me see if this is updated yet. We do have some 12Z data here. Does it go out far enough? Not quite. Oh, there it goes. We're right at the end of the run here. So maybe we'll come back and take a look at this. But you can see as of a Thursday night here, you see the development of our next system out here. So it'll be interesting to see what the European ensemble members say. We're going to come back to that here in a moment and let that get some more data loaded up there. It can be kind of slow at times. So let's take a look at what that storm would bring across the region here. Here we go on into Thursday. Now we're still waiting for that storm system to arrive, but look at these winds coming up the Oregon coast as we go through the day Friday. There's Friday night. There's Saturday morning. Now we're rolling into. You see the winds pick up across the northwest interior, the Washington coast, starting to gust up over 50 miles per hour. And then on the day Saturday, look at some of these wind gusts. 48 miles per hour for Seattle, Tacoma, Olympia, getting up towards 50. Big winds on the coast. The bent back occlusion right here could be bringing some 65, maybe 70 mile per hour gusts here if that lines up right. And then look at this by Saturday afternoon, 54 for Seattle. That's approaching pretty significant windstorm status there. And you can see a lot of 60s, maybe some mid 60s across the northwest interior. I think that's Everett checking in at 57. These could be damaging winds. Bellingham at 61. So we really got to watch the placement of that just to see if the European is onto something. It showed this a few runs ago as well, and then it kind of backed off, and now it's back with a fairly strong low, as I showed you, burrowing into the Washington coast. And on top of that, like I said, we got king tides going on. So if we scroll through here, this is a 12Z run. There's that initial system as we go through Wednesday and Thursday. But then look at these wave heights really get ramped up here as we go on in through, maybe Friday and Saturday for the Washington coast, co-located with that low pressure system, that's really going to rise some of the sea level. So if you have a drop of 30 millibars in the air pressure, that can equal a rise of about a foot of the ocean surface there. So not only do you have king tides that are exceptionally high, you have an additional foot on that because of low pressure. Then you have the wind wave action and the wave action coming under the coastline. So it can really cause some destructive waves and some beach erosion, and cause all kinds of issues. And even for some of the interior areas as well, once you start kicking up the wind and you got high tide for Seattle and you got low pressure around, you can start some flooding, and that goes for Whidbey Island up across the Salish Sea and whatnot as well. And this kind of shows you what is storm surge. So the wind-driven surge, you can see the bulge in the ocean surface there, the pressure-driven surge here as well. This is a hurricane or typhoon or whatever, a tropical system, but the concept is the same. With the lower pressure, it does create a bulge, and when we're dealing with king tides, that bulge on top of that can be pretty nasty. And again, the wind-driven surge as well, and you got the wind wave action here. So we could be lining up for some pretty significant coastal drama here coming up with these waves. And if we look at Cape Disappointment, you'll see these peak here as we go through Saturday and Sunday. Probably the highest tides of the year. Again, look at that. 11 a.m. Saturday morning, about noon on Sunday morning. Really big tides out there. You can see them compared to previous days. I mean, if we look back where we were like on December 6th, our high tide was 7.7, 7.1, 7.4 versus 10 feet on top of that. So again, remember the lower pressure, and then the wind and the wave action here could really be driving some big winds towards the coastline. And this is Everett also. We're going to be dealing with the king tides at this time frame as well. Look at this. Probably our biggest tides of the year coming up as we go through Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and still pretty elevated on Saturday as well. I also wanted to point this out because east of the mountains, we do have that lower elevation snow potential. You can see the control and the ensemble mean. You're right around 2 to 3 inches for Spokane. I mean, this is going to, like anything else, it's going to be kind of hit and miss because the snow levels are going to be kind of close there for some areas. But just kind of pointing out that we'll revisit this as we go. But Yakima, it's been showing this precipitation. Again, the control run was up over 4 inches towards 5 inches, and the mean is also showing that as well. Here's Bend, and this is on the Friday night on into Saturday storm, by the way. Here's Bend Municipal up over 2 inches. And let's take a look at the extended forecast a little bit here on the European artificial intelligence. I'm going to show you that it does disagree with what the European deterministic run is showing. But again, look at this powerful low right there off the Washington coast. That would be a fairly significant wind event, at least for the coastal areas and potentially interior. These are 2 millibars, but you go 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. You're talking about 14 millibars there across the Puget Sound from Portland and across the Willamette Valley as well. That is a pretty nice blast of wind, let's call it. And then another storm system here as we go towards early next week. But then after that, you can see the ridging build. And I wanted to point this out because this is kind of on its own, but look at this just massive ridge to end all ridges here as we go towards Christmas time. I mean, I'm hoping that this doesn't come to fruition, but yeah, I mean, look at that nasty thing Christmas Eve all the way out towards Christmas. But actually, let me back that up here for a minute, and I do want to show you the 12Z European coming in there as well, because I don't want to leave you with that, because that the artificial intelligence is kind of an outlier on that ridge for the most part. But there goes our strong storm here. This is the 12Z, and again, just a very potent low. Looks like it may be approaching the Washington coast. Again, we got some fine tuning to do because the GFS and the North American model are further west and north with that low pressure system, but that would be a fairly significant windstorm coming across the region. Then we have additional systems trying to swing in here as we go through the early portion of next week. Another system up towards Haida Gwaii there, and then maybe some additional storm systems out here. But do we get that big ridge building? Let's see. That deep low passes by, and not nearly the ridge. And you can quickly see that would be coming to an end. So yeah, big disagreements between the artificial intelligence and the deterministic. So nothing to get too worried about just yet. And I did want to show you the avalanche zone here. We're doing okay right now, moderate. You can kind of click on this if you want to know more information. But, we're not looking at any considerable or high across the region right now. Here's the 6 to 10 day above average, virtually the entire lower 48. Here's the 6 to 10 day precipitation, 8 to 14 day and 8 to 14 day above through December 23rd. So yeah, Climate Prediction Center has not latched onto that ridge through Christmas idea on the artificial intelligence as well. But yeah, fun stuff to watch. We're going to have to really keep our eye on that. And in fact, I promised that we would come back and look at the ensemble here Let's see. So we were out to 66 hours. Let us reload this information. And we will scroll out towards 66. There we are. And there we go. Okay. So yeah, it does show a fairly deep low, but a lot of the ensembles do have it closer where the North American and the GFS were showing it. However, that's still a very strong storm out there. So we have to watch the placement with that. The control run, like I said, is one of these green lines somewhere in here where that 981 millibar low of potent storm moving in. But again, a little bit of an outlier. You see that storm on the European ensemble is a little bit further west, but it's also deeper as well. It could be down into the 960s or 970 millibar low. So a very potent system out there, potentially driving huge waves with the king tide activity. So anyway, rambling on a little bit here. I will go ahead and wrap this video up so I can get it out to you. Hopefully you guys are having a good day. We'll do this all again tomorrow. We'll check the latest on the weather models and try to get some consistency, and I will talk to you guys then.